Today's conversation is inspired by this quote here from the book Abdullah, Teacher Healer by Walter C. Lanyon. In there, he mentions that the real work is to express God. That's the reason why we're here. To express God. Now, a few weeks ago, I came across an interesting clip from Dr. Andrew Huberman. I'm actually going to link in the description to it, in which he was having this conversation with David Goggins, and they were discussing the anterior mid-cingulate cortex. So this is an area in the brain, and now there's a lot of data on humans showing that when people do something, let's say on the surface, it appears that they don't want to do, and I would even add, it's what they truly desire to do. Do whatever that they know is related to the vision. This area is developed, and a person remains unflinchingly committed to their vision, their true way of being. Having consulted with many entrepreneurs who have a vision, I always say this: ideas, hunches, and inspirations are received with it. It could be to start a marketing campaign, yet they might have resistance towards it. What is suggested is if they commit to doing those initiatives, even if they're experiencing resistance, if they could be honest with themselves and say, this is the thing that I truly desire to do, yet there appears to be challenge in doing this thing I truly desire to do. No shame and condemnation. If they do that thing, what he says is this part of the brain gets bigger. And so they found that this area of the brain is larger in athletes, and it is especially large and grows larger in those that see themselves as someone who, if challenge arises, they don't run away from it. Rather, they embrace it and transmute that challenge into opportunity. Overcoming that challenge. We discussed this many times in the Flow-Based Life series. I'll link in the description to it. One of the ways that we can get into the flow is by embracing challenge, or we could say chaos. And he mentions, in many ways, scientists are starting to think of the anterior mid-cingulate cortex as the will to live and experience life. Now, I like this because all the desires that I ever received within, which upon committing to them, the definite chief aims, as we discussed recently in the almost 3.5 hour long video on Think and Grow Rich, which I'll link to in the description, which includes fitness goals, business goals, career goals, relationship goals. Any one of those commitments, I experienced challenge on the journey to actualizing those visions. There was this inner conflict. I knew what it was that I genuinely desired to do. I received it via intuition and the still small voice, which I'm going to discuss in a moment. Now, upon releasing the resistance and having performed the initiative, one step to the next step, I actualized the vision. Neville Goddard once said, speaking to you through the medium of desire, God asked the question, what wantest thou of me? then God tells you not to be concerned with the ways and means, for God's ways are unsearchable. So what I found was these unsearchable ways started to reveal themselves as plans, hunches, inspirations. I like how Florence Scovel Shinn said it. Prayer is telephoning to God, and intuition is God telephoning to you. And as we've been discussing, prayer is acceptance of the end, as in the desire to actualize your true way of being in some shape or form. True way of being, love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. Actualize it in whatever. Harmonious relationships, wonderful, lavish, steady, dependable income consistent with integrity and mutual benefit, career, service to others. These are genuine desires of your true way of being. Love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. Nothing wrong with desiring to experience that which you are. Yet one may have resistance to this. Yet if they're honest with themselves, and I've worked with many and discovered this as well, including myself, on the journey to actualizing the vision, there may be resistance. Maybe for some more so in certain regards, maybe for some not as much. For example, I know entrepreneurs that when they committed to their vision of a certain amount of income earning per year or month, a hunch or an inspiration was received within via intuition to reach out to particular people and make an offer, in which they did it effortlessly. They just sent out the emails or called them up on the phone. They were able to do it with ease. Now others, including myself, in the earlier stages experienced challenge doing this. And no shame or condemnation. This is where we have an opportunity to, if you like the example given earlier from Dr. Huberman, which I'll link to in the description, to physically develop this anterior mid-cingulate cortex, which there are many benefits in doing so. One of my greatest joys is mental mastery. I find that this is the greatest thing that I can do in my life, related to what was mentioned in the book, is to express God. And what I mean by that specifically is that in the Hermetica, it was stated that there were two gifts bestowed upon humanity. Those two gifts were mind and speech. And it also stated that those two gifts were equal to immortality. As in, you have a mind and it's fundamentally blank, and you place in mind particular thoughts. Either they are helpful to expressing God or not. You know. So we have the ability to choose our thoughts wisely. What is being proposed here is to choose your thoughts from the premise of fulfilled desire. Thoughts identified with become beliefs. And beliefs can be lightly held, or they can be held up to a dogmatic level of conviction. For example, as mentioned, there were some individuals where they received the inspiration to put out the marketing campaigns by sending out the emails and initiating that conversation, or calling the prospects on the phone. They didn't have resistance to it because they were not identified with beliefs in mind that were generating the resistance. They were listening to their intuition. They prayed to God, as in they committed to their vision. They received a desire within, again, as Neville says. Speaking to you through the medium of desire, God asked the question, "What wantest thou of me?" So they committed to a vision, and then intuition appeared as to what to do, what not to do. Now, I like how Steve Jobs said it in his commencement speech. He said, "Follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary." And he said, "Have the courage to follow your heart and intuition." So there's nothing wrong with a person for experiencing resistance. Many that I've worked with, including myself, have experienced resistance, as mentioned. There were some entrepreneurs that never had resistance to those key initiatives that they received within via intuition. Yet they had resistance in other areas of their business, perhaps on the operations side, perhaps on the leadership side. I see that as an opportunity to express God. Because if I know in my heart that I truly desire to be who I truly desire to be, which is to experience the true nature of self, love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, life experiences, then I know that if I'm resisting experiencing those things, and also experiencing the wonderful relationship with God through intuition on the journey to actualizing the vision, then there is an opportunity. And it's interesting how everything is so harmoniously aligned. They discover a structure in the brain called the anterior mid-cingulate cortex. This is actually the seat of the will to live. Now, in the other group, the ones that experienced resistance to making the sales calls, performing whatever initiative that they received within via intuition, as they ended up doing those things anyways, they talked themselves through it. They aligned with that still small voice, which is always guiding on the journey to actualizing the vision. Not only do they actualize the vision, they complete the initiative, so we could say from a neurological standpoint, they're developing their anterior mid-cingulate cortex, which has many benefits in doing so. They also experientially, beyond theory or conjecture, express God. We can say live God. I like how James Allen said it one time in his book, The Heavenly Life. Relying upon that calm strength, they live God, manifesting in their daily life the highest goodness. So, we are guided from within to actualize the vision beyond the mental chatter as we silence the mind by simply remaining in our flow. Simply remaining in our flow. Notice this. I trust you've experienced this many times. While you are in your flow, in the flow state, it's easier for you to do the things that you genuinely desire to do. It's easier to commit to what it is that you genuinely desire to commit to. I've worked with many entrepreneurs, and the simple solution to reconnect them back to which they always had the connection, so I'm not really reconnecting them back to it. Essentially, by clearing out the mental chatter, by being in flow, they automatically listen to their intuition. They automatically listen to their inner voice. And they also, as Steve Jobs mentioned in his commencement speech, don't let the noise of opinions of others drown out that inner voice. I say the opinions of others are past imaginal activity, past beliefs playing out. Are you going to re-identify with that? It could take courage to listen to your intuition. There are many benefits in doing so, alongside actualizing your vision, whatever your vision may be. So, desires are callings to express God. Again, as Neville said, speaking to you through the medium of desire. What is it that you desire? You'll always see that it relates to your true way of being. Love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. Actualize that. Experience it. One of the wonderful benefits of doing so is you become a living embodiment of that inspiration. What you'll find is others automatically get into the flow around you because you're living in your flow. You have released identification to the beliefs that was generating the resistance. You actualized yourself physically, mentally, emotionally. And that way of being in the presence of others is inspiring to others. You speak from certainty, as that certainty is the result of congruence, living the philosophy. And how wonderful is it set up, perfectly set up, that all we do is commit to what we desire, actualize what we desire. This purifies the mind. We, as a result of purifying the mind, experience our true way of being in all areas of our life. Again, love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. In personal relationships, business relationships, hobbies, career, business, more so each day, this multiplies. And all we do is listen to that intuition. Are we listening to the mental chatter, or are we listening to the intuition? If you listen to the mental chatter, that mental chatter may suggest, don't do this thing that intuition is suggesting because of this or that reason. And in earlier stages of my life, as I listened to that mental chatter, I find that I would further identify with mental chatter, and then I would generate more resistance to do what I truly desire to do, to commit to what I truly desire to commit to follow through on the inspirations, the intuition that I would receive within. Now, in the book Abdullah, he expands upon the still small voice, which I'd like to do as well with you. Neville had also brought it up one time. He said, all this is intimately connected with the mystery of the still small voice. Inner talking reveals the activities of imagination, activities which are the causes of the circumstances of life. As a rule, one is totally unaware of their inner talking, and therefore sees themselves not as the cause, but the victim of circumstance. To consciously create circumstance, one must consciously direct their inner speech matching the still, small voice to his fulfilled desires. The still small voice arises from the silence, as we were discussing. If one is experiencing resistance to doing the thing that they truly desire to do, and I've worked with, as mentioned, so many entrepreneurs, thousands of them, and career professionals, sales professionals, universally, when we silence that mental chatter, they end up doing the thing that they perceived when they were identified with that mental chatter as extremely challenging. And as long as they didn't further identify with that mental chatter, which is past beliefs playing out in mind, they would continue to progress. Their inner speech would match that still small voice of fulfilled desires. Fulfilled desires. If desires arise from God, it's God's way of communicating, as he mentioned, speaking through you through the medium of desire. God asked the question, "What wantest thou of me?" If that is the case, and I, from my own experience in life, and many that I've worked with, have found that to be the case, then, as we say, acceptance of the end brings forth the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Acknowledging, I am that. Thus we could say desire means fulfillment. And why would I say that? Because it is separation between desire and fulfillment. Illusory separation, really. Generated by beliefs in mind that result in resistance of accepting that end. That still small voice of fulfillment, love, happiness, peace, bliss, which is always there, beyond the mental chatter, the true inner voice. As Steve Jobs said, don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice. Others' opinions, as mentioned, past beliefs playing out. To experience a life that you've never experienced before, or a life that, if you look around, you might not see others experiencing that life. The resistance is generated because one is looking to this outer world for approval, validation, confirmation before they go and do something. Perfect example, as mentioned with the clients in sales. Before they would initiate the conversations, they would look around to see if others are looking. What will people think of them? Is this a weird thing to do? All this different kind of mental chatter would arise in mind from past beliefs. They're essentially looking around for permission, approval, validation, before they do what they genuinely desire to do. Again, prayer is telephoning to God, and intuition is God telephoning to you. If we look at it from this perspective, we see how obvious it is that the mental chatter is not relevant. What is relevant is that still small voice that speaks from fulfillment, from fulfilled desire. The still small voice is always speaking within, and we receive that true way of thinking. What do I mean by that? Well, practical example. I'm about to start a conversation with someone. Let's say there was mental chatter. The mental chatter said, but what will people think of you if you start this conversation with this person? What if the person does not accept you? As we've been discussing, we can say that that mental chatter doesn't make any sense. Why would I say that? Well, number one, many reasons, but number one, looking around to see what others are thinking before you do something is entirely inwardly generated meaning, either from the premise of fulfilled desire from the still small voice, or the mental chatter from past beliefs that are not true and authentic to the true way of being from fulfilled desire. What do I mean by that? We're imagining what others are thinking. We're essentially imagining that this person is thinking this and this person is thinking that if I end up having this conversation with the person. We're the only ones imagining. And number two, you can only accept or reject yourself. No one can reject you, because what does rejection mean? If you look at it from a very clear lens, what appears as rejection is optimization data. As in, you can get plenty of inspiration from a rejection. Many that I know, including myself, have built very successful businesses as a result of looking at the data from when a prospect wasn't interested in doing the deal. We would know what to optimize as far as headlines, opening the conversation, overcoming objections, optimizing the product or service. All of this was insightful, wonderful optimization data if we see it for what it truly is, in harmony and in contribution to actualizing your vision. Now, the still small voice provides the optimizations. I have a conversation within. What are ways that I could look at this in a way that's related to the vision? And sure enough, the still small voice arises. I like how it was said in Abdullah, Teacher Healer. This is a glorious thought and one well worth sitting in the silence with. I and my Father are one. You have heard it for years, yet when you ponder it anew, with the thought that from the next thought I'm going to think God's thoughts. To think God's thoughts is to see things accurately from the desire that God gave you, and more specifically, the fulfilled desire, the state of fulfilled desire, as in I already have it. And I'm relating to what I'm experiencing here from intuition, from the still small voice. Clarity arises, given to you by the still small voice, by simply being in your flow. By being in your flow, you've seen this happen many times, and you'll see it happen again and again and again. Mental clarity, the still small voice, giving vivid, accurate understanding on how to relate to the different experiences in your life in a way that's related to actualizing your vision. And it may provide some insights that could be different than what others are doing. I've done many different things in my business that were, you could say, non-linear, or it wasn't in marketing books or not discussed in videos. I did it anyways, and it worked. Was there some resistance in the beginning? Totally fine. But I did it, and it works. And what happens? Well, many benefits, including, as mentioned, one develops their anterior mid-cingulate cortex physically. It's easier to do this. It's easier to listen to your inner voice. It's easier to listen to your intuition. You unflinchingly listen to the still small voice. And then, as he said here, this is a glorious thought and one well worth sitting in the silence with. I and my Father are one. You've heard it for years. Yet when you ponder it anew, with the thought, from the next thought, I'm going to think God's thoughts, it will reveal to you a newness of life and purpose you have never known before. The still small voice, of which so much has been said, will finally become the only voice as you begin to realize your oneness with the Father within. So, to expand upon it, he says, at first the din of mortal thinking and living will cry loud for an audience. It will present evidence and facts to your attention. But as its voice is stilled by the inner turning, which means that one may think in relation to the outer world and form conclusions by looking around to seeing what others are thinking or their opinions, and then forming conclusion based on those thinking and opinions, even if it is not helpful, even if it goes against the intuition, because no shame and condemnation for people for sharing their opinions and ways of doing things. It's all past beliefs playing out. This world that appears here was first imagined. And are we going to reimagine it to appear the same way? That's what's being referred to. Or are we going to imagine it from our vision, from fulfilled desire? We receive desires. Only God gives desires, fulfills desires, appears as, and animates all that appears to reflect what was imagined. And you know what you desire to experience. And you know the way to get there. If resistance arises, no shame, no condemnation, what does one do? Do they submit to the past beliefs playing out into conformity? Even though it says in Romans 12:2, do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will. We don't need to listen to this world here. Past beliefs playing out. Now, if the world inspires you, then you know at that regard you have reconciled with it. People will start to appear. I'm surrounded by people like this. They say the same thing, or they may say the same thing differently. Now, as mentioned in Sunday's video, I created a group coaching and mastermind called Flow-Based Prosperity. I'll link in the description to it. In each one of our sessions, we end up saying the same things, or we say the same things differently, pointing to the same truth. There's only truth. There's only God. Only God gives and fulfills desires. Intuition reveals what to do, what not to do, what to say, what not to say. The still small voice provides vivid mental clarity. All I do is I remain in that state. My ideal state of consciousness, I remain in it. Everyone remains in it. And from there, wonderful connections, harmonious interactions, masterminding arises. Because what we're interested in here is listening to ourselves and trusting ourselves and allowing that still small voice to become the only voice, and then others appear, echoing that still small voice, inspiration, contribution, harmony, masterminding. So to continue, he says, but as this voice, and he's referring to that voice of mental chatter, is stilled by the inner turning, being in your flow. Be in your flow. Watch the video I did recently on active and passive meditation to be in your flow, and my flow-based life series. I'll link in the description to them. It says, by the inner turning, renewing the mind, it will finally become so weak it cannot be heard. And that's the mental chatter. Then, every time you turn within, you will hear only one voice. This is true. This has been my experience in life. It is an honor and blessing to share this with you right now. When I read this, I said, he knows exactly what he's talking about. Many that I've spoken with that have also realized this say the same thing. You will hear only one voice, and that will be the still small voice, which will guide you in all truth. For the still small voice guides, points, lights, and shows the way you are to go without confusion or fear, and that's a wonderful thing. He said, there is a reason of your being just where you are in the great plan of God. And it is your place to reject all suggestions of doubt or fear, discontent, and listen for the instructions which you are to receive. Not from an outside teacher, but from the greatest teacher in the whole universe, the still small voice, which will guide you into all things and show you all things if you are willing to listen for it and be guided by it. And then what happens? Teachers, people appear to further affirm that still small voice. You'll notice this. We can call this supportive, loving, harmonious friendships, business relationships, personal relationships, romantic relationships, as far as the senses perceive. And that's the work. To express God. What greater work is there than to express God? So I can understand clearly, and I resonate deeply when he says, that's the reason why we're here. Again, as Neville said, speaking to you through the medium of desire, God asked the question, what wantest thou of me? What does desire imply? What does your fulfillment appear to look like in imagination? I am that. Love, I am that. Happiness, I am that. Bliss, I am that. Fulfillment, I am that. Peace, I am that. That's it. It's done. On the journey to actualizing those visions. If resistance arises, no shame, no condemnation. Intuition provides some insights. I move forward with the initiatives anyways. I release that resistance. I move forward with those initiatives anyways. Even if the resistance is still there, I transmute it. Watch the video I mentioned. Transmuting the fear into excitement. I've done this many times. Public speaking. One of my favorite places to do it. It became such a habit doing it in the earlier stages that I don't experience fear anymore during public speaking. So that doesn't help further develop my anterior cingulate cortex. It's the challenging thing. So what do? I receive another desire within, and I commit to that vision. And now beliefs that were once dormant can become identified with, and resistance may arise in relation to that vision. Not with public speaking anymore, but it could be something else. And I'll do it again. I'll do the same thing that I did before. Because intuition may provide something. Again, prayer is telephoning to God, and intuition is God telephoning to you. Intuition may provide something. Yet if I appear to procrastinate, or I appear to resist what intuition is guiding me towards, the step to take, I'm going to do it anyways. As Steve Jobs said, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you want to become. I've done this many times, again and again and again. And always, every single time from my experience, I actualize my visions by listening to my intuition. Now, if one is identified with beliefs that they identified with along the way for whatever the reason may be, they might find it challenging to listen to their intuition. No shame in condemnation. Now is where we can commit to listening to the intuition that gives us everything we need on the journey to actualize the vision. It even reveals what to do, what not to do, what to say, what not to say, and if you have questions as to why, talk to that still small voice. You'll get the mental clarity. And that's your relationship with God. And so, isn't it wonderful? God gives desires, fulfills desires. They're your callings. Intuition reveals the way within. And the still small voice brings vivid mental clarity in relation to whatever appears on the journey to actualize the vision. And in grand summary, you do not conform and you think for yourself. You listen to yourself and you trust yourself. That's what this is about. Thinking for yourself, listening to yourself, and trusting yourself so you could live the life that you truly desire to live. You don't need to look around to this world and ask for opinions as to what you should or should not desire. You know what desire means. Only God gives and fulfills desire. Only God gives the intuition that guides you on the journey to actualizing the vision. God arises as that still small voice. Everything is given to you and it's all within. So I trust you found this video to be helpful. Let's conclude this with an auto-suggestion to further encourage. You can say, desires are promises from God of what I shall experience. Through my authentic way of being, by committing to desires, acknowledging them as fulfilled, vivid clarity arises via intuition, God revealing the way. Clarity arises through the still small voice. As I listen to the still small voice becomes the only voice. As I experientially, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually realize my oneness with the Father within. If you would like a copy of this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk with you soon. Take care.